Welcome to the Bret Boone podcast. I'm Bret Boone, and recently I went back to Atlanta. We had an alumni gathering, my first one with the Braves. I got to catch up with today's guests. Leo, I'm gonna introduce you this way. One of the greatest pitching coaches of all time. Welcome, Leo Mazzone, to the program. Leo, thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you, Booney. I'd be glad to help you out any way I can, just like the pitchers helped me out. I didn't mess them up, Booney. That's why I was good, the best of all time, because I didn't mess them up.
You know, but that's part of it. And I love this because the fans are going to get a little bit of view of Leo. I know some of the questions I'm going to ask you today, Leo. I already know these answers because in the '99 season, I played my one and only season for the Braves. We got to go to a World Series, got whooped by the Yankees. But my seat, everywhere I went in my career, I had a seat, and my seat in Atlanta was right next to Leo. So we had a lot of conversations, a lot of venting during the game, him yelling at me about the pitchers, me yelling at him about I couldn't get any hits. So we had a lot of fun time. It was pretty cool. This Braves alumni we just had, it was my first one. I know you've been to some in the past, but I thought they did a really great job. A big list and a lot of guys I hadn't seen in a while.
Yeah, I think that Greg McMichael's done a great job with it. And without Mac, I don't think you'd have all this activity going on with the Braves alumni. It's been going on for quite some time now, and it's been great. We have a blast, and of course, next year is going to be special because it'll be the 30th anniversary of the '95 World Championship team, and so that'll be something special. But every year there's a theme that makes it special, and we had a great turnout. I mean, I hadn't seen you in quite some time, so it was great to see you and great to see some of the guys again and have a few beverages and shoot the bull.
Yeah, 95. I don't like 95, Leo. 95. 95. You beat us. You beat us to go to the World Series, and I didn't like that. And you beat us quick too. Four quick.
I'll tell you, real funny though, Booney. The writers in Cincinnati came to me. We're getting ready to play you guys, and actually, we were kind of the underdog because of your team speed. So the writers used to come to me and say, Leo, what are you doing to counteract Cincinnati's team speed? Are you doing anything as far as timing plays or backdoor pickoffs or this or that? And they went over about 5 or 6 different things. And I said no to every one of them. And they said, well, what are you doing? And I said, well, we're down in the bullpen working on our pitches. And they said, what about their running game? I said, if they don't get on and we make our pitches, there is no running game.
That's true. That is true. And yeah, it was, that was ugly because we were good. We were really good in Cincinnati, 94, 95. Obviously 94 was the strike season, but 95, and we knew it was going to be tough, but we didn't know it was going to be, we didn't know it was going to be a sweep, but it ended up happening. I just finished watching Doggie's documentary for you guys. Doggie, that's Greg Maddux. It just came out on MLB Network. Leo was a prevalent part of it. Finished it last night. I watched the first half, and I had to call Greg, and I called him, and he answered, Boone, what are you doing? I said, I'm watching Maddux on this special on MLB Network. He goes, oh, what do you think? You know how Greg would say. Yeah. But I got to catch up with him a little bit. I thought it was well done. Were you happy with the finished product? I think all these documentaries are great, but I thought the cast, obviously you were a big part of Greg's at least 10 years in Atlanta. All the big players were there. It was Glav, it was Smoltz. I thought it was really cool having the Bonds interaction, and I love the Randy Johnson coming in for his 2 cents.
Well, I thought it was outstanding, and you know, to be in the dugout with him for 10 years. Was just one of the greatest things I ever got to witness. I can't remember, Booney. I can't remember him having a bad game. You know, I'm sure he might have had 1 or 2 mixed in, but I can't remember him having a bad game. And the conversations that you would have with him was pretty much an exchange of ideas. For example, when we got him over from the Cubs, I told him to give me every one of his checkpoints that he uses mechanically, and then he says, "Will you tell me how you guys, stay healthy all year and get to the World Series?" I said, well, between the both of us, I think we can figure that out. So, and then, he's the only pitcher that I was around that would get a guy out in the first or second inning, and he'd be in the dugout sitting next to me. and say, Leo, when he comes up in the 7th and the game's on the line, he has no chance. And I'm sitting there going, well, I get, he set him up early in the game for later. I mean, every once in a while, he'd put the guy opposite. Bagwell I think Bagwell run off of him one time. He went in on him. And he never pitched inside the Bagwell, but he thinks he's going to do that in the playoffs. He's not going to see that pitch again. So things like this that you sat there and went, man, oh man, but I'll tell you a funny story, Booney. In 95, he got off to a 4-0 start, and we're getting ready to go down the bullpen. He's playing the Mets. He says, Leo, he said, you've never been out to the mound this year since I've been pitching. And I said, what do you want me to do? Make something up? I said, you're pitching great. Our practice sessions are great. You feel good physically and mentally. I said, no reason for me to visit. He goes, well, it gets kind of lonely out there. He said, I'm going to look in the 6th inning tonight. He says, and when I look in, come on out and pay me a visit. And I went, maybe he can't, maybe something could happen that he might not go 6, but I certainly hope not. And in the 6th inning, he got a shutout going, and he gets the first out, and he looks into the dugout, and he's staring at me. And Bobby goes, Leo, get your butt out there and make sure he's okay. He's looking for you. So I go out to the mound, and I'm out there, and I said, well, here I am. I said, what do you want me to pay you a visit? He goes, well, I'm glad you come out. He goes, what do I look like from in there? I said, well, you got a 3-hit shutout going. You look great. And he goes, well, I'm glad you came out because I don't want to talk to Chipper. He said, I sure as heck don't want to talk to the umpire. He said, and the catcher don't speak English. So he said, I'm glad you came out.
I'm telling you, too.
That's a true story.
No, 100%. I lived with him for a year, so I know. That's just how Greg is. And when you're his opponent, he kind of has a mystery to him. But then when I came over for the 1 year, he was my locker mate. That sounds exactly how Greg is. And, I think it was well documented in this hour and a half long special. He was as loose and as funny. And he's got that dry sense of humor as could be. But when he was pitching, he was as fierce as anybody out there, and he really was. And he had that goofy personality that I remember, Leo. I'd go into the shower. I go, "Oh, Maddux, you not wearing shower shoes?" And he said, "Booney, why do I have to wear them? The rest of you are." That's typical Greg, and that's how he would. That's how he was. But yeah, we're going to get to that and what it's like being on that Braves team and in the 90s playing against you. It's fascinating to me. I learned a lot. And I think, I always used to say, we were in Seattle and I'd sit there and I always used to think how stupid pitchers were. I said, you're so dumb. Just because you hang a breaking ball and I hit it in the seats, that doesn't mean to abandon the breaking ball, but 9 out of 10 guys would. Not that staff. They were thinking at the highest level. They were thinking, where I always used to think I could outsmart you. Well, you couldn't outsmart that staff. And we'll get into it as this goes on, but it was fascinating to me. 14 straight division.
Well,
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was thinking we used to base our attack not on who we were facing, but your own pitcher's strength. So basically, you've been in a lot of those meetings where you say, you can't throw this guy this, you can't. And we never used those types of terms, as you remember. We just based it on our pitchers, how they wanted to attack hitters. And then I would also add I'd even make a few things up, adding to what their strength was to give them at least a much more confidence than they had to get somebody out.
14 straight division championship. That's unbelievable. You won the 1995 World Series. Okay. Were you the greatest pitching? Did they make you the greatest pitching coach of all time? Or you as their pitching coach make them arguably the greatest staff of all time?
I think they made me the greatest pitching coach of all time. There's no question about that. Because here's the one thing that I was so proud of. I only had one goal for our pitching staff. And we always used to say, go to the post when it's your turn, and the rest will take care of itself. And they did that better than anybody in the history of baseball. And we based all our pitching philosophies on, number one, owning the down and away strike. And number two was learning how to control your effort and throw more often with less exertion. So that, in other words, Maddux and Glavine averaged out about 88, but they could have thrown 92 if they wanted to. but they weren't as accurate at 92 as they were at 88. So then, therefore, Booney, when you look at that, our guys had something left in the tank by the time they got to the seventh inning, and they needed a little extra. They still had it in the tank. And here was the genius of Bobby Cox. And not too many baseball people know this, Booney. Not many at all. Maybe most of them still don't. Bobby Cox had what you call a max out inning. And what was a max out inning? Well, he and I always talked about, is the pitcher going to max out his effort in this particular inning? When I'd say, yeah, Bobby, I think he's going to max out. He'd go, well, we'll have somebody ready because pitch count doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Or if he would say, Leo, is he going to max out this inning? And I'd say, no, he's still on cruise. He's still at his 90%. He's smooth, strong. He goes, okay, then we're not taking him out, and pitch count don't matter. So we based all our moves like that on the amount of effort somebody's putting on a pitch from pitch one all the way to the seventh, eighth, or ninth inning, depending on how far they were going to go.
And these are the interesting things I like to hear from guys like you, that this was your life. This was your livelihood. I've talked to, I watched the modern game, and it drives me crazy. The layman in me just thinks, okay, I think because they're throwing harder now, without a doubt. Bullpens have been prevalent. The power bullpen is the game in 2024, max effort. But I see more injuries than I've ever seen. I was going through it. I was thinking about it last night, preparing for our show today. And I remember, going to Atlanta. I'm like, for my tenure with the Cincinnati Reds for 5 years in the 90s, it seems like every time I played Atlanta or Atlanta came to Cincinnati, nobody was ever hurt. I never missed Maddux, Smoltz, and Glavine. They were never hurt. And it seems like today, everybody's hurt all the time. Everybody's on the IL at least 10 days, at least 15 days every single season. Tommy John's at an all-time high. I've talked to doctors, Leo. I've talked to ex-teammates, ex-pitchers, trainers. They all have their thoughts on why the injuries. I want it from Leo Mazzone. What are the data guys that are in charge a lot today? What are they getting wrong about how they're going about preparing for a big league season?
What they definitely got wrong is starting with the term that I didn't care about called velo. And this starts now for young kids in traveling all-star baseball. It starts now with everybody concerned about how hard somebody can throw. And these teenagers are being told, or from 12 years on up, well, if you don't hit a certain number on this radar gun, you're not going to make a club. And what does the young kid try to do? He tries to do that. So in other words, our healthy staffs, listen, Booney, 537 starts in a row and you miss one start, we're doing something right. Well, anyway, what they do now is you throw less often with the most exertion you can possibly have. And that starts when you're a teenager. And by the time these kids graduate and get into pro ball or college, there's a real good chance they're going to blow, because the whole emphasis is on how hard you can throw. Now, in other words, it's good that you can throw that. But here's the key. Say, for example, that I had that guy from the Pirates that can throw 101 miles an hour or whatever it is. What I would try to do with him is see if he could trust a 90 to 95% effort on the pitch, and instead of throwing 101, locate 95. And that's basically what was the thinking behind – when you saw a guy like Jarrett Wright turn his career around with us, he could throw hard as anybody, but he learned how to command 91 instead of blowing 95 on every pitch. But these are just examples, but this is what the kids hear. If I hear a youngster come to me, the first thing his coach or parents say is, well, he's up to so-and-so on the gun. I really don't care. I really don't care. I want to see if has a nice release on his fastball. I want to see him have a quiet delivery, nothing going crazy, flying out all over the place, spin it out on your follow-through. On a follow-through now, they teach him to stop themselves. And like, for example, if you see a right-handed pitcher throw a pitch to the hitter, his right leg spins out toward the first baseline, because they're saying you could throw harder if you do that. Yet you raise the risk of arm injury because you're almost throwing into a recoil position or stopping yourself. all these things. They're trying to create power from the second base bag as opposed to creating power from the top to the finish instead of creating it way behind you. Why? It's all about how hard you can throw, not how you can pitch, all about how hard you can throw. And the spin rates, now guys are trying to get as much spin on the ball as they could. We knew that stuff. Boone, Johnny Sane was a great pitching coach, and he had a spinner with him all the time. And he had me back there studying all the different spins on fastballs, 2-seamers, 4-seamers, sliders, curves, all these types of things. The thing that taught me the most about spin was if you stood behind that pitcher, and I'm sure you've seen this a million times from second base, a pitcher throw a fastball and it cut. And I would ask him, I'd say, did you cut that on purpose? No. I said, well, how come it cut? I don't know. I said, well, we got to find out, because if it's only doing it on purpose or when you don't know it is, it could cut into the nitro zone. I said, so we got to know, you got to know the spins on those pitches, whether it's a cut spin, back spin, over the top spin, etc. You've got to know these things and be consistent with your pitches. If you don't know when a ball's going to cut, you're only going to be 50-50. So those are all the things that we studied and all the things that we put together so that we could pitch. And I'll never forget, Maddux said it best one time. And when he said, Leo, you mind if I talk to the young pitchers in spring training? That's before we send everybody down. And I said, sure, go ahead. So we go on out to the bullpen. And I said, hold on a minute, guys. Before we break for our stations, I said, Mad Dog has something he wants to say. And Smoltz goes, oh, this ought to be good. And I said, no, he's serious. So he is. Yeah, he gets them all together. And he goes, you know why I'm a millionaire? And they went, why? He goes, because I can throw a fastball where I want to. He says, you know why I got beachfront property in L.A.? He says, because I can change speeds. Thanks, Leo. And that was it. And I got them all together, and I said, what did he just tell you? There's nothing more to pitching than fastball command and changing speeds, complementing the command of your fastball. And the reason why, Boone, that our philosophy was to own the down and away strike, it was because that would allow us to pitch inside when we wanted to, not and do it selectively and do it when you want to, not just because some chart says you got to get this guy out in, And then so we made it like, if we had a base of a right-hander on a stand out, down and away, and a lefty to lefty, the same thing. When it turned into opposite arm to bat, then we went inside a little more. You had to do that. We understand that. But I never forget that one guy said, another pitching coach says, how do you teach pitching inside, Leo? We can't get these guys to do it. And I said, well, if we teach them to own the down and away strike. He said, well, what about inside? I said, if you own that, you can go in, no sweat. I don't know how many times guys would jump out of the way of Glavine, and that fastball would be down the middle. So
it was brilliant because in that time, the Braves were the only one, we used to talk about it as hitters and go, they don't pitch in. It was a surprise once in a great while. Glav would be that changeup away, fastball away, right. changeup, maybe once in a while break you off a curveball, and then when you least expect it, he'd freeze you in with that backdoor 2-seamer. Yeah. But it was very rare. And it might have been a big situation in the game or runner on third, less than 2 outs, and he wanted to show you something he hadn't shown you maybe in your last 10 at bats against him. But yeah, that was what was fascinating about you. You talk about Les, the guy that comes to mind in our generation that went from a big time power pitcher and started taking off. Less sometimes is more. Less gets it off the barrel. If you're 94, 95 and in a 2-0 count or a 3-run count, you give him an 89 or 90, that'll get it off the barrel when I'm looking for 95. Less is more. Bartolo Colon comes to mind for me. He was a 98 guy. He had 99 in there. But when he started being a real pitcher and winning a Cy Young, he was a 92. He started to pitch like Maddux. He started to own that 2-seamer, started off the plate away, bring it back for a strike, and it was off to the races for him. He became a different pitcher because as that guy that threw 96, 97, I loved him. I used to say that's the softest 97 I've ever, lightest 97 I've ever faced, because you square it up. I mean, it would just explode. But when he started pitching, he became really tough. I love the philosophy, the honest in, out, down, and away. And I heard that over and over. As an opponent, I used to come to Atlanta And this is what made you guys different. I knew exactly what Greg was going to do to me. I knew exactly what Smoltz was going to do to me. I knew exactly what Tommy was going to do. And it didn't matter. I'd face any other great pitcher, and who knows? I might face Pedro one time, and he might go heater, slider, slider. Next time I might face him, he might throw me 5 changeups in a row. I didn't know what I was going to get. The fact that I knew what I was going to get from your big three and still really didn't have a big counter punch is what used to drive me crazy. I knew what Maddux was going to do. No situation. What's Doggy going to do? He's going to throw me 2 seamers off the plate away. I was going to give up on it because your eyesight says that's a ball, and now it's a strike. And I saw it in front of my eyes just come back over there. And I said, I'm so sick of this. And I'm going, man, I'm committing to that fastball away. And you'd give up on it. And then, big situation. He might mix in a changeup. He might throw you a 2-seamer on your hands. Glav, I know what he's going to do. He's going to throw me 2 seamers away. He's going to float that changeup, a special changeup, by the way, that seemed to never get there, kind of the left-handed Trevor Hoffman. And then you had Smoltz, who is the prototypical power pitcher. Over the top, he's going to throw 4 seamers on the outside corner. Then he's going to throw you what looks to be a 4-seamer on the outside corner, but it just happens to be a slider and break it off the plate. And you can't pick up either one. And man, all 3 of them used to give me nightmares. Glav, second greatest left-handed pitcher I ever faced. I got to give Randy the number 1.
Sure.
Maddux or Smoltz, man, he gave me fits. Didn't ever do much. Took him deep one time, and I let him know every time I talked to him. But that was it. The rest of it was him getting me out. And I think I saw this in the documentary. I think you alluded to it. Greg is simply... I walk around and people ask me about the greatest players of all time. My answer is Maddux, Smoltz, Glavine. When it comes to pitching, Barry Bonds is the greatest hitter I've ever seen. No one's even close. But when push comes to shove, overall body of work, night in, night out, start after start after start, I have to say Greg Maddux is the greatest pitcher I've ever played with and played against.
Well, that means a lot coming from you and players like you, that most of them have said the same thing. And but they always tried to get better. No matter how much success they've had, they tried to get better. For example, Smoltz early in his career was worried he was afraid of throwing a changeup because his breaking stuff was so good and he had no confidence in a changeup. So I thought, his delivery is just perfect for a split. So I thought I'm going to get him down to bullpen and we're going to give him another weapon against left-handed hitters. But before I did that, Booney, we had a guy named Bruce Suter living in Atlanta. And I called Bruce and I said, can you meet me for lunch before I go to the ballpark? He said, sure. I said, I need your help. He goes, okay, Leo. So I bring him over to the area we were going to have our lunch with. It's called Stooges. I'll never forget it. And so, Bruce, give me all your information on the split because I'm going to go show Smoltz. I'm going to try to add that pitch to him, and he's more than willing to do it. I said, so give me all your information. He gave me all my information for the split that I needed. I showed it to Smoltz. Here he comes. Now he's got fastball, breaking ball, split. Well, the split made him just eat up left-handed hitters. The other thing was, though, then he started incorporating it to right-handed hitters. These were all later on in their career. Now, the split for Smoltz was early in his career. Using it against righties was a little bit later in his career. Tom Glavine, we found out one time, Booney, we were playing against the Astros, the Killer Bees. Great ball club, great players. And he made a location mistake to Bagwell. He threw him an inside changeup. And Bagwell about fell on his face trying to hit it. And he come in, he goes, Leo, did you see that? I said, yeah, I saw that. I said, you made him look sick. He said it was a mistake, location mistake. He said, I threw him an inside changeup. I said, damn. I said, I like it. And he goes, think I should throw some more of those? I said, why not? Well, Maddux hears our conversation, right? Maddux goes, hey, Tommy. He goes, yeah. He goes, if they hit that pitch, it's only going to go foul, which reinforced what I said. Yeah, go ahead. When the next inning, he's throwing inside changeups to the Killer Bees. And Bobby comes over next to me and goes, hey, Leo. He said, was that last pitch Tommy threw a change up? And I said, yeah. He said, was Javi sitting up inside? I said, yeah. He goes, what are we doing? He said, isn't that kind of dangerous? I said, Glavine said he can't hit that pitch, Bobby. He goes, okay.
Let him roll.
I mean, you can't be scared, Booney. You gotta roll with it. You can't be afraid. If you're coaching in the big leagues, you can't be afraid to coach. All your good players, your great players, everyday players, Bobby Cox, our staff, they loved all of us because we weren't afraid to coach. We also weren't afraid to tell them the truth. Great players like you and Larkin and the pitchers and all, they don't want to hear some eyewash or all this phony stuff. Right. They want you to be honest yet supportive. And that's what we did better than anybody, besides the guys having great talent.
Well, and it forges. It's not what you want to hear, because sometimes you got to hear what you don't want to hear. But right. Then a mutual respect and a bond is created. That, man, if I go to Leo, he ain't gonna bullshit me. He'll tell me whether it is, hey, maybe I don't want to hear it. Maybe I'm thinking I know what he's going to say, and he's just going to come on top and just confirm my thoughts. But that creates a great working environment. And the thing about being an opponent of the Braves, man, I knew I had to think with them because they were thinking. And I alluded to the fact that, hey, if I hit a slider in the bleachers, I can eliminate 9 times out of 10 that pitcher throwing me another slider. Makes my job easier. That's all I tried to do, especially the second half of my career, is if I wanted to eliminate a pitch from the pitcher, if I could take just a basic 4-seam, well-located fastball away and shoot it through the hole on the right side, and I got that look from the pitcher like, wow, that was a good pitch. Now I pretty much said he's not going away again. He's either coming in or he's going to try to trick me with something. It becomes predictable. Not with the Braves. Not with the Pedro Martinez. He wouldn't. Not with a David Wells. David Wells, I got a quick story for you.
Yeah.
I used to hit David pretty good. And one day I took him deep. I think it was in Seattle. Dead center on a fastball. I came up my next at bat, and I'm going, he ain't going to throw that again. He threw me 4 in a row. And I struck out, and he's looking at me laughing because he knew that's what I was looking for. The key to pitching is know who's looking for certain pitches, identify them, and you got to start thinking with them. Now, there's certain guys out there that just see ball, hit ball, and you don't have to think with them. But I used to look at the pitcher. My pitchers in Seattle used to turn to me. I'd say, listen, you talk about the killer bees. They would sit on pitches. Yeah. And I'd say, I'm telling you, we had Jeff Nelson and Arthur Rhodes in the bullpen. And they used to ask me, Booty, what's Biggio look for back? I said, well, I'm telling you, they look for pitches like I do. So if you're ever confused late, just turn to me and I'll tell you. Because I knew a certain time Biggio's sitting on your neck. And if you hang him that slider, he's going to hit a double down the left field line right now with the bases loaded. So throw him anything but that. But it's the game inside the game. These guys are, if you play with them, you play against them, how they were always interacting, always talking. Right. And they were probably the 3 smartest guys from a pitching perspective I've ever been around. And they all did it differently. They were all legitimate number ones. You never wanted to face it. And I've told you this story, but in the 90s, we didn't have the cell phones. By the way, for those of you watching the Bret Boone podcast today, I found out Leo Mazzone still doesn't have a legitimate cell phone. He's got a flip phone. His wife, Rebecca, was nice enough to help us out today with getting on the feed. But we didn't have cell phones back then. And you'd go on the road, you had the USA Today, and it was always under your door, and you'd pick it up. And I'm telling you, 2 weeks in advance when I was coming to Atlanta or you were coming to us, I'm a Cincinnati Red. And I go, all right, let's see where these Maddux, Smoltz, and Glavine clowns are pitching. And I'd start counting the days down. I'm like, all right, Glav pitched on Tuesday. Okay, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Okay, he's back on Saturday. Okay, he's off Sunday. And I'm telling you, every time, I have like one eye shut looking like, okay, and we get to Atlanta Friday. Now, Maddux, Smoltz, Glavine, every time. Now, mentally, I'm starting to think about it 2 weeks in advance. And I always tease Kent Merker, who was a great pitcher in his own right. I played with Merk. I said, Merk, no disrespect. You've had a lot of success. But if it comes down to Maddux, Smoltz, Glavine, or Merker, I want Merker all day long. And he completely understood that. But I think it wasn't just me that did that with the USA Today. I think during that 90s run, it was pretty prevalent amongst hitters in the league.
Right. Well, Booney, on the opposite side with our guys, they would all come to me and say, "What am I?" We never changed. In other words, we didn't adjust no rotation. In other words, if you're gonna save this guy for Cincinnati instead of Colorado, whatever the team was. It wasn't. I said, Bobby, go save him for what? We got to win each game that we play. But here's the thing: spring training, we're getting ready to break camp. And Maddux comes up to me and he says, "Hey, Leo," he said, "if I don't pitch opening day," he said, "it's okay. I've been there, done that, so don't worry about it." I said, "Okay." Glavine comes by and he goes, "Hey, Leo, if I don't pitch opening day," he goes, "don't worry about it." He goes, "Been there, done that." Smoltz goes, "Hey, Leo, if I don't pitch opening day, no big deal. So you guys choose who you want." I'm going, okay, there's something going on with all this stuff, Here I find out that they checked their schedule in advance all the way 2 months down the road and they knew that if they didn't pitch opening day, they missed pitching in Colorado. And now they're telling me they didn't want to pitch opening day because they knew that if they didn't pitch opening day, they missed Colorado. But if they pitched opening day, they had to pitch in Colorado.
Yeah, that was before the humidor, and you didn't want to pitch there. People think the Colorado thing is, the air's so light, so the ball flies and a lot of home runs, which is true. But that's not the true advantage for us as hitters in Colorado. It was the vastness of the outfield and how big it was, and all our little cheap hits, they'd all fall in Colorado. The outfielders play deep. Yeah, if you get the ball up in Colorado, it never comes down. Try hitting a wedge there. You hit your wedge 135 in Colorado, you hit it 160. So imagine how a baseball goes. So I can completely understand that as far as that. Okay, honest in, out, down, and away. I've heard it a million times. I've referred to it on this show a couple times already. Why were you guys the only team that really stuck to that? Like I said, I don't remember anybody else. We knew your philosophy. We knew what you guys were going to do. And it's like, it was really tough to have a counter punch to that. Why were other organizations, other teams, why didn't they use that philosophy?
Because they weren't very smart, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, even the throwing programs that we used, where everybody made their starts and they had asked you how we did it. It just wasn't three guys. You had a whole starting rotation. And I think the 98 rotation was called the greatest of all time because your number 4 starter was Kevin Millwood and your number 5 starter was Denny Nagel behind the big 3. And so, they all went to the post. They all start because we were on the mound practicing our craft a lot. This flat-footed throwing and all this BS. Look, you make your living at 60 feet 6 inches going downhill to a catcher. And so when I was coming up, baseball, some of it was in a 4-man rotation. And when I pitched in the minor leagues, I loved pitching in a 4-man rotation. But then the baseball world went to a 5, and they wanted to give that starting pitcher an extra day. And I felt that was too much rest. So I went ahead and did it on my own. I didn't ask nobody, didn't tell nobody about the guys throwing twice in between. Well, in the minor leagues, they all loved it. And guess what? Nobody got hurt in the minors either. And so when you get to the big leagues as a pitching coach, then you had to have a staff that didn't break down. If your staffs in the minors broke down, you had no chance to get to the big leagues. It wasn't any of this other stuff. And so we did it. It worked. I used it in the big leagues for my entire career. And it worked based on throwing more often with less exertion. So I had a pitching coach tell me, he goes, "You know what?" He said, "If you throw," I said, "Why would you have them throwing flat-footed in the outfield their extra day of throwing, as opposed to if they're going to throw, why not throw them off the mound?" He said, "They'll have a tendency to throw too hard." And I said, "Well, that's what the hell they pay you for, is to regulate the effort." So that's what we did. That's what we did. And then we had a throwing program for our relievers, Booney, because I was looking around and I was thinking, how many times does a pitching coach ever get to work with the relief pitcher? Pretty much not hardly at all. They're usually, they might pitch that night. Okay, I got you. Well, I thought, you know what? If you have 11 guys on the staff, number 11 guys should get the same amount of attention as number 1. And how do you do that? Well, you do that by making sure you communicate with him and have conversations with him. And if he hasn't warmed up or been in the game for 2 days in a row, I would ask a reliever to come down and say, you want to come down to bullpen and give me a little bit of 5 minute and do a little spin session, a little feel and touch, go down the mound, get a feel for the mound, this and that. And they go, well, Leo, we'd love to. I said, now remember, you're preparing for tonight's game. He said, okay. Well, I had the front office executive come down and say, hey, Steve Bedrosian was one of our relievers in the 90s. And he said, and he hadn't pitched in 6 or 7 days. And Bedrock, I mean, I think he's one of the greatest pitchers I ever saw in my lifetime. And he was, hey, I haven't pitched in a while, and I'd say, come on, let's go touch it up a little bit. I'm going to go down there and throw it out, but he was joking. He understood. And so anyway, I told him down in the front office, he goes, you have Bedrosian down there throwing bullpen? He says, yeah. I said, you do that to some of your relievers a lot, don't you? I said, well, yeah. I said, because if it's 2 days in a row that they don't warm up or get in a game, I said, then I try to follow up on that. And he goes, well, what if you have to use him tonight? What are you doing? And I said, that's what we're doing, is preparing for tonight's game. And the relievers loved it. That way you gave everybody the same amount of attention. And when guys are on the mound more often, practicing their craft and their location, and we wanted 80% fastball command of down and away, then all our other pitches come in behind that, and all our other locations came in behind that, because they'd say, this guy's a first ball fastball hitter, Boone. You know that. You've heard it your entire life. I'll say, okay, he's a first ball fastball hitter. We're going to give him a first ball fastball. It's going to be a down and away strike, not a middle away strike, a down and away strike. And we're either going to go strike one or get a one pitch out, because we were pitching to contact. We wanted the end, or we wanted the handle. And we would refer to everything as, let's be sneaky quick instead of overpowering. Let's be quiet out there, quietly stick it to them and leave. And to allude what you said to earlier, managers would come up to me and say, it's the damnedest thing, Leo. And I'd go, what? They'd say, we know where you're going to be and we still can't do anything about it. And I heard you say that earlier, and I went, well, I've heard that before. Here's another thing in your strategy. 2 things that you probably might not have heard, or you tell me if you have. Glavine's pitched against Cleveland in the World Series, that great game where he won 1-0. That's probably the deepest lineup I ever saw in my life, as far as, 1 through 9. And so Tommy said, Leo, after the second inning, Tommy said, Leo, they're moving up on the plate on me. And I said, yeah. He goes, I guess I'll have to start going inside more. I said, we got 2 options. He goes, what's the other one? I said, well, if they move up on you, you can go out a little further and see if they follow you out. Now, if they follow you out, you're still in the same boat. Now, if they don't follow you out, that's, you're going to have to go in, either open that up or jam somebody. But if they follow you out, you're in the same boat. They follow him out. And he, I think he maybe threw 7 pitches inside in that game against Cleveland. And then the one in Cincinnati, Kevin Mitchell owned Glav. I mean, owned him. Glav could not get him out. And I don't know if you were there with Kevin that year, a couple of years, but, I went out to the mound with the bases loaded, and we were already down 1-0. And Kevin was up at the plate. And I said, I went out to the mound and said, Tommy, I said, I want you to pitch to this guy like there's nobody on. He goes, I said, because besides, you got a base open. And he told me, he looked at me, he goes, well, I don't know what you're looking at. He said, well, the bases are loaded. And I said, no, home plate's open. He goes, oh, don't give in. I said, no, don't give in to this guy. He walked him on a 3-2 changeup that I thought he would chase, and he didn't. Tommy did too. Retired the next 18 in a row, and that's the only 2 runs they scored the whole game. So if he would have gave in to Mitchell there, that would have been extra bases with the bases loaded, and he's going to be down 4-0. This way, he walked in a run. We didn't care. He got the next 18 out.
Tommy was famous for that, and we know that. We knew that. Second half of my career, I knew that. I wish I knew it my whole career, but Tommy will not give in to you ever. And then when I got a chance to play with him, I said, "What's your thought process, Booney? With the bases loaded, I'd rather walk 1 than give up a gapper, and that's 3." And for the rest of my life, I thought, yeah, 3-2 doesn't mean, everybody thinks 3-2. Oh, he's got to come to you. He's got to throw a strike. Not Tom Glavine. He's got to
No.
throw you something that appears to be a strike, and right in that zone where should I swing, should I not swing, but I'm going to make you think about it. And that was kind of the genius of that whole philosophy, that team, and that run that you guys had. I want to talk about their relationship. You know, there were golf partners on the road, whoever wasn't pitching. If all three of them weren't pitching for a couple of days, they'd all three be there. They killed me, Leo, because they dragged me along once in a while. It was like being on tour. You know, I tell people, I said, do you think Tiger Woods got some pull in the golf world? I said, try hanging out with Smoltz for a while. He's got more connections than Tiger on the golf course. They were all competitive as hell, but they were buddies.
Yeah.
How was your relationship with the three of them? Was it the same, or was it individual with each one of them?
Well, I think it was the same, yet it was individual. For example, with Smoltzy, if you were going to maybe get a point across, and you wanted to get a point across, you had to use a little more of a lighter approach, because Smoltzy was more of the emotional guy, you know. So you'd use a lighter approach, and say, Smoltzy, get your head out of your butt. Oh, Leo, the catcher just told me. I said, we don't need to hear it twice. I'll go back in. Stuff like that with Smoltzy. But anyway, then with Glavine, he was your never give in guy, stubborn in a great way. All good pitchers are stubborn, I think. And so anyway, I could push him harder. I could say the same thing to Glavine and be a little more firm and get the same point across to Smoltzy and be light in my presentation. With Maddux, have your numbers together. If he asks you a question, give him an answer. For example, let's see, Willie Green and Reggie Sanders. We're going to pitch against Cincinnati, right? And we're in the dugout, and he goes, Leo, game's on the line. Who do I pitch to, Willie Green or Reggie Sanders? And I said, well, let me see. I said, let me tell you. And he asked one other coach that, and the other coach said, oh, it doesn't matter. We can pick anyone you want. He said, I don't want to hear that. Don't want to hear that. He says, what do you think, Leo? I said, I would pick Willie Green to pitch to. He's going to hit left-handed against you. He said, yeah. I said, listen, Reggie Sanders strikes out a lot. I mean, a lot. I said, he strikes out on pitchers that pitch north and south. I said, you don't pitch north and south. You pitch east and west. Occasional up, and lower than low. I said, but you're an east-west guy. I said, Willie Green, he can't hit your sinker, he can't hit your cutter, and he can't hit your changeup. I said, so I'd take Willie Green. Okay. We're walking down the bullpen, and I go, who'd you pick? He'd go, Willie Green. Now I'm nervous. I'm going, oh God, did I pick the right guy, or he didn't like that, or did he like it? Only in a good way. Only in a good way. And then, or the time when, you saw it on TV, he couldn't get Luis Gonzalez out. And so he told Bobby, he said, we can walk him if you want, because Bobby refused to have Mad Dog walk anybody. And of course, the game came up, and here it was in the seventh, and we're going to put him on. And he goes, no, wait a minute now, wait a minute. He goes, give me two pitches. He said, I'll probably go sinker away, cut her in. He said, and I think he'll pop it up to third base. We were in the dugout going, whoa. But anyway, that's the approach for all three. Having with Glavine and Smoltzy, Glavine was just, you could jab him a little bit, and in a good way. With Smoltzy, a different presentation. And but they all three, I told any pitcher that came up in our to the big leagues, I said, look, you got 4 pitching coaches here, guys. Take advantage of it. I said, you got 3 starting pitchers. Take advantage of it. Pick their brain. Understand what they've done for their entire career. Your career's just starting. And so therefore, or here's what I would do too, Booney. Say, for example, I had a young left-hander down in the bullpen. And so I say, hey, Glav, it wasn't his day to throw. I said, come on down to the bullpen. Come down to the bullpen and let the young kid throw a little bit, and he'd watch him. Or if the guy was left-handed and Glavine was having his bullpen sessions, bring the left-hander down and have him watch those sessions. So we always had those guys. Bobby used to say, where the hell's all the pitchers at? And they said, they're all down the bullpen with Leo. We would have in class every day because everybody threw all the time. All you do now is see guys shagging balls in the outfield. Bobby had no shagging in spring training Maddux saw that and he went, "Oh man, I came to the right place. Pitchers don't shag." Stuff like that. Little things like that, made it all fun to come to the park. And when they believed in all those things and they saw the results, they felt the results, then it all works. But you can't do that without your head manager allowing you to. When Maddux came over, Bobby saw him in Pittsburgh having coffee early in the year. And Bobby goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Well, I'm having coffee and reading the paper." He goes, "Why ain't you out there playing golf?" He goes, "What?" He goes, "Why ain't you out there playing golf? Get your ass out there and go play golf." He said, "Get away from the game for a little bit." Booney, how many organizations have you been in? There's no golf allowed.
Yeah. No, you got to treat and the mental side of the game. It's so important how you treat people. You're talking about. That's why I asked you the question, because I wanted to hear. Everybody isn't the same. You don't treat everybody the same way. You've got to have that fortitude to look at one guy and go, I need to light a fire under this guy's ass, and this guy over here, I got to be real careful because he's sensitive. So I got to treat people different to get that the best result I can out of all of them. And you mentioned Millwood. I love Millwood. In '99, he kind of became our horse that year. There were some injuries, and Millwood had that great year. But he was, the fourth and fifth guy. A Steve Avery early, a Kent Merker, who I mentioned, a Denny Nagel. These are all great pitchers, but not a part of the big three. Did you have to manage those guys? Because they kind of knew they weren't Maddux, Smoltz, and Glavine.
Right.
Was there a mental approach to them that was different?
Well, I think they didn't care. They knew it. I mean, everybody else knew it too. No, look, they were good in their own right. Avery was the Dodger killer. Avery in 1991, Booney won 18 games as a 21-year-old kid, then won the MVP, the NLCS. And we went over here's a great story for you. We went over all the Pirate hitters. That's when it was Bonds and Bonilla and a great ball club. And so we're going down to the bullpen of Three Rivers after we had our meeting and all that kind of stuff. And but I know Abe. He probably let it go in one ear and out the other, which is fine. So we're walking down the bullpen and we're down 3-2. And I said, "Abe, you got it figured out?" And he says, "Yeah, Leo, I do." I said, "Good, tell me." Just making conversation. He goes, "I'm going to go warm up, find out what I got, and pitch accordingly." I said, "That's smarter than any scouting report I ever heard." And he beat him 1-0. Nothing, just with what he did best. Or Kevin Millwood. "Kevin, how you feel?" "Good." "Tired?" "No." That's it. That's your conversation. One of the worst bullpen guys you ever wanted to see. He would have his practice sessions or warm up, and you'd sit there and go, But then you knew, after being with him all those years, like somebody say, he didn't warm up very good. I said, "I don't care how somebody warms up, okay? Just drop it. I don't care." I've seen guys shoot lights out in the bullpen, can't get nobody out of between the white lines. Kevin Millwood's the opposite. He would walk out there, this big old strong dude, all of a sudden the same pitches that were out there were not what you saw in the bullpen. So all we wanted to do is, make him feel good physically and mentally. Nothing bothered him, and he just went out there and battled and was a 16-game winner in the 4-hole. And Denny, he was a 20-game winner in the 5-hole. But then again, Booney, after all these years, we went to the postseason a couple of times with none of them there. Mike Hampton, Jarrett Wright, John Thompson, Russ Ortiz. Russ Ortiz won 22 games for us one year. Russ come over from the Giants, and I'm thinking, why in the hell did the Giants trade him? And he comes over and he goes, Leo, he goes, I said, "Russ, why did the Giants trade you?" He goes, "They told me I walked too many guys." I said, "Well, I don't give a damn how many you walk." He goes, "You don't?" I said, "No, as long as they don't score, I don't care." And guess what? We never talked about walks the rest of the year. Those are just examples. I know I'm getting away from the big three.
No, it's awesome.
Kent Merker the same way. I said, "Merk, he was starting. We're at the vet. And he's worried about it." And I said, "Merk, you know what? You can give up 4 home runs in a game and go 9 innings. He said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah." I said, 4 solos. 4 solo home runs, you can go 9. Or, it's that 3 or 4 run inning that's going to. So we were talking about damage control. And I said, "Merk, what's your most important pitch?" He go, "Well, my fastball." I said, "Your most important pitch is your next one. that's your most important pitch. Because if you have that mentality of your most important pitch is your next one, then you'll have damage control in the inning instead of having some snowball. Well, you know what? We're winning, but he's given up 3 runs, right? 3 solo home runs, and he come in and sit down next to me. He goes, I think I'm testing your theory a little too far. And I said, no, Mark, you got 1 more left.
Yeah, you got 1 more bullet.
Yeah. Anyway, different approaches for different people.
This is all great stuff, and you don't hear about it every day, you know. I got traded to you guys after the 98 season. I'll never forget. I got traded. 2 things went through my mind, Leo. Man, I'm going to have, I got a chance here to go to my first World Series. And 2, and this might be in reverse order. I ain't got to face those guys anymore. I ain't got to face them.
You were with us too.
I came to spring training. I remember it was myself, Brian, Jordan. We were new to the ball club, and Bobby kind of addressed us, and he said, "Booney, Brian, you know, welcome here. Here's what I do, and here's what we do in Atlanta. We win. I put a lineup out every day, and we go steamroll our opponents, or something to that effect." Yeah. And I remember looking around. And it was different than anywhere I've ever been. I remember sitting in the postseason. You know, you have that player shares meeting where we talk about who's going to get a share. Well, all the players that are there on the roster for an entire season, they automatically get a share. The coaches and the manager, they get a share. But the rest is up to the players on how much we give, the traveling secretary, the people. You know, and I've been in a few shares meetings in Cincinnati. And so I know how it went down. Well, I'm sitting in the shares meeting. You know, this is after a long season. We're getting ready to go to the postseason. And Glav was kind of the boss. Sure. He ran it. He'd been there the longest. And they're going through these shares. And I'm like, you're giving the grounds crew 3 shares? And so I speak up. I raise my hand. I said, Glav, wait a minute. Not all of us. He goes, Booney, here's the deal. He goes, we here in Atlanta, we go to the postseason every season. And we take care of the guys. And I just started laughing. And I said, well, I've been to the post, you know, I've won the division twice, but I don't go every single season. And he just started laughing, and everybody kind of looked, and it was kind of a funny moment. My point is, it was a different place than I'd ever been. It was a culture. It was, we're here to win. It was very blue collar. It was lunch pail to work, clock in, do your job, and go home. I really enjoyed the guys. I mean, good guys all through. It was a different environment. It was expected. It wasn't, hopefully we're going to win this year. It was, no, we are going to win. It's a matter of whether we win the World Series. And it was different than any place I've ever been.
Well, I think number 6.
Talk about that a little bit. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, number 6 had a lot to do with it. I mean, Bobby was, you know, in other words, everybody went in there knew that was Bobby Cox's clubhouse, and they also knew that Bobby would go through a brick wall for him, and he would do anything he could to help guys with success. And they also knew that he could be really firm when he wanted to. But a lot of times when he had to be firm with some guys, the coaching staff didn't even know it. He would do it behind closed doors or in his office, and at the time, you know, the coaching staff wouldn't even do it. But he let his coaches coach. You know, he didn't control. He controlled everything, but he let his coaches coach, and that made a world of difference too. He was easy to work for, and you know, he would ask your opinion during the game, especially with the pitching staff, and things like this. He made you feel important. Now you're talking to a guy that spent 24 years in minor leagues, and for a long time, I didn't feel very important. He made you feel important. He made players feel important. He made it, you know, he played pitchers that never had any success anywhere else and had success with us. I remember John Burkett came over. What a great pitcher he was. And I think one thing I told him, Booney, with Berkey, I said, anytime you have a slider situation, I want a fastball down and away. He goes, really? I said, yeah, you watch what happens. I said, you're either going to freeze somebody or lock them up. And he started doing that. And everybody said, where's all the junk he's supposed to throw? He was throwing 86-mile-an-hour fastballs. And so the bottom line, though, was I went over to him when he first got there, and I said, Berkey, how you feel? This was after the 6th inning. And he just kept staring at me. And if you know Berkey at all, he's funny. He is a funny dude. And that dry sense of humor. He kept staring at me. I said, what the hell's wrong with you? I said, are you tired or not? He goes, nobody's ever asked me. They've only told me if I'm staying in or going in. I said, no, if you're not tired, we're not taking you out. You're going to have to hit. He goes, I'm not tired. I said, well, good. Go grab a bat, But that's what he said. You're the first. This organization is the first one that ever asked me instead of just telling me. And he loved that too, every minute of it. So just the example of your clubhouse or early. Now, I saw Bobby mellow out some, but one time he chewed my butt out. You'll love this one, but we're in LA in 91. It's my first full year as his pitching coach. I was there for half a year with him in June of 90 when we were building this thing. And we finally catch the Dodgers. We're tied for first place, and Smoltzy's starting out in LA. And Smoltzy's got a 5-0 lead in the fifth. Now it's 5-1. Now it's 5-2. But the way they're scoring is not. They're just dinking. They dink a few. Then there's a wild pitch. Then there's a walk, and then you say, okay, he's losing. So I run out there. I said, look, you're not in any trouble. I said, nothing's going to snowball. I said, you're one pitch away from out of the inning. I said, so just slow the game down and remember what our saying. He goes, what? I said, your most important pitch is what? He goes, my next one. I said, okay, you've got to implement that right now. Well, I go back in, and now it's 5-3. Runners on second and third, 2 outs. Bobby goes, you think we should take him out? I said, no, I'd give him one more hitter. I don't care. I'm going to take him out anyway. I said, well, I don't care. You don't want me to take him out, do you? I said, you asked me, I told you. I don't want you to be out. So this went back and forth for a little bit. I don't give a damn. I'm taking him out. I said, well, you're the manager. Do what you want. So when he walked out, I took my hat off and scratched my head. And I went, damn, what was that all about? Anyway, Smoltzy comes in, sits down next to him. He goes, what's going on? I said, I'll tell you what's going on. You're fixing to blow it. That's what's going on. Just be quiet. Because I was. So anyway, Bobby comes in from the dugout, from the mound, and he don't say a word to me for the rest of the game. If there has to be somebody up in the pen, he does it. He doesn't say, Leo, get so-and-so ready. And I'm going, I wonder who pissed him off. I said, I bet Smoltzy made a face at him when he went to the mound or flipped him the ball when he took him out. Something happened out there. We end up winning the game. Bobby's in going, attaboy, guys, attaboy. Leo, come on in my office and shut the door. I go in my office and shut the door. You ever take your hat? I'm going to clean it up. You ever take your hat off again and scratch your head when I make a decision? Don't you ever do that? I said, what? I didn't do that on purpose. It's just a reaction.
I just had an itch.
Yeah. And he goes, you know what he said? You didn't want me to take him out. This was the whole thing. You don't want me to take him out, did you? I said, well, you asked. I didn't. So that went back and forth, right? Then finally looks at me and goes, I didn't want to take him out either. I said, what? He goes, I didn't want to take him out either. He said, I'm going to tell you why I took him out, Leo. He said, I'm sending a message to that young pitching staff that you have out there that I don't want to hear the word potential no more. We're in a pennant race. We catch the Dodgers. We're in first place. No more potential. I want results, and I want somebody to put that game away in that situation. I looked at him and I went, damn, you know what? He's right. You learn so much over the years. He said, that's why I took him out. He goes, what do you think? What do you think about that? And I said, well, I think that's the smartest thing I ever heard. He says, good, get the hell out of here. But see, he that got into my brain going, I wanted to send a message to the rotation. No more potential.
It's cool too because the current Atlanta Braves team under Brian Snitker and he talks about Bobby and how much influence, because Snit's been in that organization forever, and all of a sudden they're having a run, where they've kind of been the dominant team in that division for 7 or 8 years and a couple World Series. And man, it's like kind of Bobby and that culture all over again. You got Walty Weiss in the dugout, Eddie Perez. It's pretty cool to see.